The blanket that remembered. She thought it was just an old quilt until she fell asleep and it began to tell her the stories of her family. The guest room in Grandma Rose's house was a small, quiet, and slightly musty sanctuary of the past. It was a room that was not so much decorated as it was curated, a loving and slightly cluttered museum of a long and well-lived family history. The walls were covered in faded sepia-toned photographs of serious-looking ancestors with stiff collars and kind eyes. The air smelled of old, beloved books, of cedar from the heavy, dark wardrobe, and of the faint, sweet, and almost floral scent of time itself. On the bed, a small, iron-frame bed that had slept 4 generations of children, was a blanket. It was not a modern, store-bought comforter. It was a magnificent, heavy, and deeply loved patchwork quilt. It was a masterpiece of frugal and patient artistry. Hundreds of small fabric squares, faded florals from a mother's apron, sturdy blue denim from a father's work shirt, a soft yellow flannel from a baby's first nightgown, were all stitched together with 1,000 tiny and impossibly neat hand stitches, creating a beautiful, chaotic, and deeply meaningful map of a family's life. Tucked into this bed, on this cold, clear, and star-dusted Christmas Eve, was a little girl named Sophie. She was 8 years old, a city child, more accustomed to the bright lights and the loud, urgent sounds of her modern life than to the deep, profound, and sometimes intimidating quiet of her grandmother's old country house. She snuggled deeper under the weight of the old, heavy quilt, its soft, worn fabrics a comforting and slightly scratchy presence. Characters wish or struggle. The heart's winter. Sophie's struggle was a quiet and very modern form of disconnection. She loved her grandmother, she loved her family, but she didn't know them. Not really. She knew their present-day faces, their familiar holiday smiles, but their past, the rich, deep, and often difficult soil from which her own small life had grown, was a closed book to her. Her own life was a fast, bright, and forward-moving stream of digital images, of fleeting moments, of a present that was always instantly becoming the past. She had no real, tangible sense of the deep, slow, and powerful river of history that she was a part of. She would look at the old, serious, and unfamiliar faces in the photographs on the wall, and they were just pictures, strangers. She wished with a quiet and unformed longing she didn't have the words for, that she could understand. She wished she could feel a connection to these ghosts, to these stories. She wished she could feel, for just a moment, that she was not just a small, solitary, and disconnected island in the present, but a part of a long, beautiful, and unbroken chain of love, of struggle, of a story that was so much bigger than her own. As she lay in the quiet, dark room, listening to the gentle, rhythmic breathing of the old house, she pulled the heavy patchwork quilt up to her chin. She traced the seams of a single, faded, floral patch with her finger, and she wondered. Whose dress was this? What did she dream of? The questions were a quiet, lonely, and unanswered whisper in her own small and disconnected heart. The magical encounter, a spark of wonder. As Sophie drifted off to sleep, a strange and beautiful thing began to happen. The quiet, dark room did not remain dark. A soft, warm, and deeply golden light began to emanate from the patchwork quilt itself. It was not a bright, startling light, but a gentle, breathing, and deeply comforting glow, a light that seemed to be made of pure, distilled memory. And with the light came a sound. It was not a loud or a verbal sound, it was a soft, whispering, and almost musical rustle, the sound of 100 different gentle memories, all stirring at once. The rough denim patches seemed to whisper of the salty sea wind and the hard, satisfying work of a fisherman. The soft flannel patches seemed to hum a gentle and long-forgotten lullaby. The bright calico patches seemed to laugh with the faint, happy, and distant echo of a summer picnic. The quilt was not just a blanket. It was a library. It was a warm, soft, and living storybook, and it was about to invite her in. The light and the sound seemed to seep into Sophie's own sleeping mind, and her dreams were transformed. They were no longer the chaotic, nonsensical dreams of a normal sleeping child. They were clear, vivid, and beautifully, wonderfully real. The transformation, the gift within. She was no longer in the guest room. She was standing in a field of tall golden wheat under a vast blue and summer sky. A young woman, her face strong and kind, her dress made of a familiar, faded floral pattern, was laughing as a young, handsome man, his trousers made of a sturdy blue denim, chased her through the field. It was her great-grandmother she knew with a deep and certain dream logic. And this was the moment they fell in love. The scene dissolved, and she was in a small, cozy, and fire-lit room, watching that same woman, now older, her hands gnarled but steady, rocking a small sleeping baby wrapped in a soft, yellow flannel nightgown. It was her own grandfather as a newborn. She could feel the profound and overwhelming wave of a mother's love, as pure and as real as if it were her own. The quilt took her on a journey through her own personal and deeply beautiful history. She saw the moments of great and simple joy, the weddings, the births, the summer fairs. She saw the moments of deep and quiet sorrow, the farewells, the hardships, the long and difficult winters. She saw the courage, the resilience, the quiet, and the unwavering strength of the ordinary and extraordinary, people whose blood, whose stories, whose very fabric was now a part of her. She was not just an observer in these dreams, she was a participant. She could feel the warmth of the summer sun on her great-grandmother's face. She could feel the deep and abiding peace of her grandfather as he fished in the early morning mist. She could feel the small but powerful spark of hope in her own mother's heart as she left the small country village to start a new and uncertain life in the big and intimidating city. The faces in the sepia-toned photographs on the wall were no longer strangers. They were her family. Their stories were her stories. The long and beautiful chain was no longer invisible. She was a single, strong, and beautiful link in it, a link that was connected to a past that was now, finally and beautifully, alive and real within her. The ending, the whisper of Christmas. Sophie awoke on Christmas morning to the bright winter sunlight streaming through the window. The room was quiet, and the quilt was just a quilt again, a heavy, warm, and comforting presence. The magical glowing light was gone, but it was not gone from her. She felt it, a warm, steady, and deeply rooted glow in the very center of her own small heart. She went downstairs for breakfast, a new and quiet confidence in her step. The house was full of the cheerful, happy chaos of her extended family. But she did not see them in the same way. She saw the stories. She saw the history. She saw the echoes of the faces from her dreams in the familiar, beloved faces of her own living family. She walked over to her grandmother, who was standing by the window looking out at the snowy winter garden. "Grandma," she said, her voice quiet, but full of a new and certain wisdom. She pointed to a small and particularly faded patch of pale blue silk on the old patchwork quilt that was draped over the back of the armchair. "That was from your wedding dress, wasn't it?" she asked. Her grandmother turned, a look of profound and teary-eyed astonishment on her beautiful old and wrinkled face. "Yes, my love," she whispered, "but how did you ever know that?" Sophie just smiled, a quiet, gentle, and deeply knowing smile. The blanket had told her. The narrator reflects that we are all made of stories. We are all patchwork quilts, pieced together from the love, the sorrow, the courage, and the dreams of those who came before us. And sometimes, in the deep and quiet magic of a Christmas night, we can be given a beautiful and a precious gift, a chance to wrap ourselves in our own living history, to feel its warmth, to hear its whispers, and to finally and beautifully understand that we are not and have never been alone. We are and have always been a part of a story that is so much bigger and more beautiful than we ever could have dreamed. And that's how Christmas found its way into another heart,